Yeah, what happens with the, the effect of inert gas addition now? If the volume is kept constant and inert gas such as the argon is added which does not take part in the reaction, the equilibrium constants remains undisturbed. It is because the addition of inert gas at a constant value does not change the partial pressures or the molar concentration of the substance involved in the reactions. The reaction quotient changes only when the added gases is a reactant or the products involved. So anything when we talk about the equilibrium, why does the inert gas does not influence the rate of the reaction? Because inert gas does not participate in the reaction. First of all, first reason is that it did not participate in the reaction. Second, when you put the reaction at the constant volume, what exactly happens? Any amount of inert gas when you put it, they don't affect the partial pressure of the molar individual reactants or the products, because partial pressure of the individual component will remain the same only, even if it was there or not there. Understood?
Okay.
Good. So basically, inert gas does not influence the rate of reaction because it doesn't participate in the reaction. It can be only varied when the concentration of the reactant or the product is changed. Next, let's go to the effect of temperature change now. Whenever the equilibrium is disturbed by the change in concentration, pressure or the volume, the composition of an equilibrium mixture changes because the reaction quotient Q no longer equals the equilibrium constant Kc. However, when the change in temperature occurs, the value of equilibrium constant Kc is changed. Now let's understand that part. Till the time we had discussed that when the concentration was changing, the value of Qc was changing, and hence the reaction was in the forward or the reverse direction based on the greater or the lesser than value of the Kc. Correct? Now, when you increase or decrease the temperature, directly we are going to affect the concentration, because when you increase the temperature, the rate of reaction also increases. We'll see how the rate of reaction is getting increased now. In general, the temperature depends on the equilibrium constant depends on the sign of the delta H of the reaction. So delta H is nothing but the enthalpy of the reaction. So that will actually determine whether is the exothermic reaction or the endothermic reaction. Okay. Now, the equilibrium constant of the exothermic reaction is delta H decreases as the temperature increases. So just write down this part. Delta H, we are going to talk about the enthalpy values. Okay.
Okay.
So let's write down this part first. I'll just send you the part. The conditions of the delta H when it is negative, that we need to be very clear in that part. Just write down this part. Okay. And the equilibrium endothermic reaction, delta H increases as the temperature increases. So basically, two conditions we are talking. What happens to delta H when temperature increases? What happens to the delta H when temperature increases in the exothermic reaction and the endothermic reaction?
Okay.
Getting it? Just write down this part because it's pretty important.
Yes,
Yeah. So, Tanisha, you are done with the first question? Any
Yes,
questions,
sir.
any doubts in the first one?
No, sir.
Perfect.
We can
Let's-
explain the second one, that is in the circular.
Circular one, okay. Circular one is difficult? Okay, no problem. Now again, you start writing the parameters. What are the conditions basically? As long as you are clear about the conditions, so it will be very easy for you to frame the problem. Now let's understand the 8 friends J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q are sitting around the circular table facing towards the center. Now Q is not the neighbor of N and M. So whenever you see Q is not a neighbor of N and M, so make sure that means Q is not next to N and M. Clear?
Yes, sir. So basically, Q is not between N and M.
No, Q cannot be between the N and Q is not adjacent to N or adjacent to M. So it is n and m can be together, but q cannot be with m also, q cannot be with n also. Anyway, n and m, even if n and m are separate also, q cannot sit next to each of them. It doesn't mean that n and m are together or q is in between the n and m. It's just telling that q and n cannot sit together or q and m cannot sit together. Clear?
Okay, sir.
Next, also q is sitting immediate left of j. So j is left participant is q and p is the neighbor of n. Neighbor of n means it can be adjacent. Okay, left or
Either
right.
left or right to it.
Yeah, it can be left or right. So all both options you need to check. O is the immediate right of the k. So now O is very clear that k, wherever k is there, next right and right to the k is O only. So KO
that
is
is-
fixed. L is sitting next in between the N and O. So L's position is also fixed. So what are the positions fixed? So we'll try to write down the data for it. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Now as per the arrangement, first what we need to do, we draw the circle and mention all the points on the circle. Clear? And what are the data which is given to you, that we start putting in that part. Correct? So
Yes,
what are the
sir.
data being given to you? Q is immediately left of J.
So we can start the seating arrangement of J with any point, right?
Any point, doesn't matter. Any point. Because it's a circular, no? It's a symmetry. It cannot, it has to start with, you can just take it, because we are talking in terms of, see, you have to go with the anti-clockwise direction, okay?
Okay.
Try to arrange in the, when you say the left hand side, you take the anti-clockwise direction will be, right hand side, and then that way. The anti-clockwise will be taken as the right hand side, okay?
Okay, sir.
So when say the Q, when we say that the Q is, O is the immediate right of the K. Correct?
So O is the immediate right of K, that is KO.
KO. Correct. KO. Immediate right of that means KO. So basically anti-clockwise direction. Got it?
Yes. Yes, sir.
And L is sitting between N and O. So now you got it now. First start with J, and then immediately you have the J is basically next to the Q. They already told the Q is immediate left of J, so Q is very clear on J. And then finally they have told me O is immediate right of the K, so KO is also together, and L is sitting between N and O. So now this also became clear to you. K O L N, this also became very clear to you. They are sitting together now. Understood this part? So we don't know the position of the rest of the two, isn't it? So once we don't know the arrangement of that other two, so it can be all the possible combinations, you can take it now. Whatever the parameters we got fixed, so out of that fixed, what are the things got clear to you? Q and J were clear, and K, O, L, N were clear. But position of K, O, L, N can be different. All the possible combinations we need to check. There can be no space between J and K, or there can be one or two spaces between the J and K. Right? This is only two left out points being given to us. Correct? Now you need to just do the last parameter discussion, because Q cannot be the neighbor of N and M. So once the three arrangement is done, now you can just think when because this condition, which scenario this condition is satisfying. Q cannot be neighbor of N and M. That means Q can't be sitting next to N. Correct? Q cannot be sitting next to N and M. So all the three arrangements we have noticed that. Can you see the last arrangement is the Q and N was together? So that is gone. Clear? Any questions, any doubts?
Sir?
Yeah, Vijay.
I wrote it.
Oh, good. Now temperature changes affect the equilibrium constant and the rate of reaction. How does the temperature change? So you got this two part clear to you? That in the
Yes, sir.
in the exothermic reaction, there is the what is that? Yeah, delta H is basically negative, you know?
Yeah.
Delta is negative for the exothermic reaction and positive for the endothermic reaction and the increase in temperature. Clear? Next, there's an example. Production of ammonia according to the reaction now. N2 plus H2 gives you 2 NH3, right, on this reaction now. And then delta H is given as 92.38 kilojoules per mole. This is an exothermic reaction and we have delta H as a negative value.
Okay.
Got it? Okay, now let's understand
Yeah.
this part. So here we have to take care of the both Lee-Chatter's principle as well as the exothermic reaction, the enthalpy change. Now, as you increase the temperature, what will happen is the equilibrium is going to shift to the left hand side. Because when you increase the temperature, the concentration of the ammonia will decrease because it will again go the reverse reaction, right? Next,
Yeah.
since the low temperature is favorable for the high yield of ammonia, we cannot, because we see it's an exothermic reaction, so low temperature is required for the yield of ammonia. If it becomes a very high temperature, then the reverse reaction will start flowing through it. So practically this has to be done at the low temperature, and we need to use if you want to do in the low temperature, we need to use the catalyst. Got it? Because your goal is to yield the maximum ammonia.
Okay.
Okay. Now we'll understand effect of temperature and expansion. So basically you understood this part. See, nitrogen plus hydrogen when it gives ammonia. So when you increase the temperature, in this case, when you increase the temperature, since it's exothermic reaction, delta H is minus 92.38 kilojoules per mole. Now the possibility of the reverse reaction starts happening because as increased temperature favors the backward reaction. Ammonia starts decomposing back to the nitrogen and hydrogen. But in order to your goal to produce ammonia in the equilibrium concentration, the favorable condition is to decrease the temperature. Then only decrease the temperature of the reactant such that the reactants will combine together to form the ammonia and release a large amount of energy. But in order to happen this, you need to use the catalyst.
Okay.
Okay. Now let's go to the effect of temperature. One experiment we'll try to understand, and then we'll try to understand how the catalyst is going to help you in this part. So effect of temperature and equilibrium can be demonstrated by taking the nitrogen dioxide gas, brown in color, which dimerizes into the N2O2 gas, which is colorless now. So this is of observation. So you already written reaction to NO2 when you try to do the reversible reactions. Again, this is exothermic reaction. To NO2 when you heat it becomes a N2O4 gas. So now NO2 gas is prepared by the addition of the copper turnings to the nitric acid and is collected in the two 5 ml test tubes, ensuring some intensity of the color of the gas in each test tube, and the stopper sealed with the araldite. Now 350 ml beakers 1, 2, 3 containing the freezing mixtures, water at the room temperature and hot water 363 Kelvin respectively are taken, and both test tubes are placed in the beaker for 2 to 8 placed in the beaker 2 for 8 to 10 minutes. After this, one is placed in the beaker 1 and another in the beaker 3. The effect of temperature on the both direction of the reaction is depicted very well in this experiment. So at low temperature in the beaker 1, the forward reaction of the formation of N2O2 is preferred, as the reaction is exothermic and thus intensity of the brown color due to the NO2 decreases, while in the beaker 3, the high temperature favors the reverse reaction and formation of NO2 and thus brown color intensifies.
Okay.
So did you understand that what we are doing in this case? NO2 we are taking, this is basically the quick observation for the forward and the backward reaction when the effect of temperature, based on the effect of temperature, which favors it. So what we have done, so it's very clear indication that when you take the NO2, that's basically the brown color, and slowly when it starts changing into the N2O4, it changes brown color to become the colorless. Correct? Now,
Yeah.
you collected the NO2 gas in the two beakers. Okay. So you connected the NO2 gas in the two 5 ml test tubes, and you have the 3 beakers. You kept it. Beaker 1, 2, 3 containing freezing mixture and water at the room temperature and hot water. So basically what you do, beaker 1, 2, 3. So basically one is at the room temperature. No, one is the freezing temperature, other is the room temperature, third one is at the water at 363 Kelvin. Correct? So basically low temperature, room temperature and the high temperature. Got it? So once you collected the NO2 gas, you kept it to the room temperature and the water.
Yes, sir. Got it.
Then one test tube you kept it on the freezing temperature. Second test tube you kept it on the very high temperature. What is the observation at the freezing temperature? Freezing temperature, you see that the brown color changes to colorless. But at the higher temperature, you see the brown color intensity remains the same only. So we can just say that directly that the higher temperature is favoring the reverse reaction, whereas lower temperature is favoring the forward reaction. Is it clear?
Yes, sir. Clear.
Excellent. Now, let's go to the next part now. Effect of temperature can also be seen in the endothermic reactions. So this was exothermic reaction. Now, we have the cobalt H2O 3 plus. So this is a complex compound you have. And you are treating with the 4Cl minus ions. Now, you get a complex compound that the pink color of the cobalt COH2O6, 3 plus and 4Cl gives you cobalt chloride Cl4 2 minus and 6H2O. Now what is happening now? This is endothermic reaction. Endothermic reaction means what? The heat is given in. So the pink color of this compound changes to the blue color. At the room temperature, what happens? The equilibrium mixture is blue due to the cobalt chloride ions, and when you cooled it to the freezing mixture, the color of the mixture changes to the pink color. So as you reduce the temperature, the temperature is the reduced, because it is a higher temperature. It requires the higher temperature for the higher temperature for the reaction. So what will happen in this case? Basically, we are telling you that since it's an endothermic reaction, you need to give the large amount of heat to make the reaction in the forward direction. But if you don't give the heat, right? If we don't give the heat, so what will happen? The reverse reaction will start taking place, right? the blue color will start changing to the pink color at the equilibrium. Clear?
Yes, sir.
Yeah? Understood, Vijay? Any questions, any doubts in this part?
No, sir.
Okay, let's go to the effect of catalyst now. What the catalyst plays the role in the reverse reaction and forward reaction now? Basically, all the time we say the catalyst increases the rate of chemical reaction by making the available a new low energy pathway for the conversion of the reactants to the products. We know that it increases the rate of forward reaction and reverse reaction that pass through the same transition state and does not affect the equilibrium.
Okay.
See, when we take the catalyst, right? Yeah, so catalyst, we tell that it doesn't participate in the reaction. So basically, if it doesn't participate in the reaction, what kind of change it brings to the reactants and the products then? So it actually, when we say that it increases the rate of forward reaction, reverse reaction. So whatever the graph it will form would form for the forward and the reverse reaction, it will remain the same. The graph will remain the same, but the time interval will reduce. Got it? Catalyst lowers the activation energy of the forward and reverse reaction exactly the same amount. Catalyst does not affect the equilibrium composition of the reaction mixture. It does not appear in the balanced chemical equation or in the equilibrium constant expression. So remember that catalyst plays the role in a lot of things, right? So this part is quite important because catalyst lowers the activation energy of the forward and reverse reaction. What does it mean? What is the activation energy now? The minimum energy which is required to overcome so the reaction can take place. That's called the activation energy. Clear? Now,
Yes, sir. Clear.
let us consider, we'll take the example of ammonia now from the nitrogen and hydrogen. We know it's exothermic reactions. So what will happen in the forward reaction because of the number of moles are decreasing. And equilibrium constant decreases with the increase in temperature, and the low temperature the rate decreases and it takes longer time to reach at the equilibrium. Whereas the high temperature gives satisfactory rates but poor yields. Okay, good. So why do we take the example of nitrogen and hydrogen from ammonia? Because it's a very simple reaction, just to help you understand. So we have the reaction, and in this reaction what will happen? Equilibrium constant decreases with the increase in temperature, right? Equilibrium constant decreases with increase in temperature. But when you do that lower temperature, what happens? The reaction doesn't go fast. The reaction doesn't, the rate of formation of ammonia decreases then. It takes longer time for the reaction to happen. So how to overcome that? That's the time we need to use the catalyst for it. Did you understand now? Because German chemist Haber discovered the catalyst consisting of iron catalyzed the reaction to occur at satisfactory rate at lower temperature, whereas the equilibrium concentration of ammonia is reasonably favorable. Since the number of moles formed in the reaction is less than that of the reactants, the yield of ammonia can be improved by increasing the pressure.
Okay.
Now, as per the Haber's process, what he figured it out that the reaction can be favorable in the forward direction at the lower temperature when we start using the catalyst as the iron.
Okay.
Got it?
Yes, I got it.
Next. And what he does, since the number, okay, that's fine. So, and the And what was that? Because we wanted, our goal was to yield the ammonia also, right? Because anyways, when you increase the temperature is anyway not going to help you, because it will start the reverse reactions, right? So at that optimum temperature, we want to increase the yield of the ammonia. So what he figured out, he figured out the increase in pressure started helping it. So when you increase the pressure, the yield increases, right? Use the catalyst and the increasing the pressure, right? So we got the balance of the two parameters now. One is for catalyst, other is for pressure. So optimum condition of temperature and pressure for the synthesis of the ammonia using catalyst were around 500 degrees Celsius and 200 atmosphere now. So that's where when you do the trial and error method, you come around the what is the temperature on which it is going to give the maximum yield, and what is the pressure. So basically temperature was 500 degrees Celsius and the 200 atmosphere pressure, it gives you the maximum yield. Clear? So this you need to remember, okay? This part, ammonia is using the how much? 500 degrees Celsius and 200 atmosphere pressure.
Okay.
This part this is very important for the Haber's process. This you need to remember that part. Okay.
Yeah.
Next, similarly, the manufacture of sulfuric acid by contact process. Again, there is another important reaction for the contact process. You have a reaction like sulfur dioxide combining with oxygen gives a sulfurous acid, SO3 gas, sulfur trioxide acid, sulfur trioxide gas, SO3. Now here we have the Kc value 1.7 and 10 power 26. Now the value of the K is suggestive for the reaction going to be completion, but practically the oxidation state of SO2 to SO3 is very slow. Thus the platinum or the divanadium pentaoxide or vanadium pentaoxide is used as a catalyst to increase the rate of reaction. So basically in the contact process, basically the process of producing the sulfuric acid, and SO2 to SO3 conversion is because it's oxidation reaction and it's very slow reaction. So in order to increase the rate of reaction, we use the catalyst, that is the VDO5, vanadium pentoxide. So effect of catalyst, you got it now. Effect of catalyst is basically whenever the favorable conditions or some things are not matching with the reaction to take place, that time you have to invoke the increase in the rate of reaction by using the catalyst.
Okay.
Clear? It can be, the reason can be the lower temperature, the reason can be the excessive time delay, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so any can be the reason now. Now ionic equilibrium in the solution now. Let's go to the ionic equilibrium in the solution now. Yeah, Danisha, you're back. What happened? Your internet connection went off?
Yes, sir. There was a power cut, so the Wi-Fi connection was lost.
Oh, okay, no problem.
So I have attended the exercise also, so I've done till question number 10. I'll start with 11.
Oh, good. You're clear about this part now? Any questions,
Yes,
any doubt till now?
No, sir.
Oh, wow, that's nice. So we can do that part. This is a pretty important questions.
Yes, sir. So I'll start with question number 11.
Yeah, start with 11 now. Yes. 10th one, right? Okay, 11th. Yeah. Okay, yeah, so write on the reaction here. So we have the ionic equilibrium solution, that you have the ferric ions plus the thiocyanate, it gives you the FeSCN 2 plus ions. Okay.
Okay.
Just write on this part, then I'll tell you. So you have the ferric ions, Fe3 plus combining with the SCN thiocyanate, so it forms the ferrous thiocyanate complex ions. Now there
Okay.
are numerous equilibrium that involve the ions only, but in this following section we will study the equilibrium involving the ions. So it's well known that aqueous solution of sugar does not conduct electricity. However, when we put the common salt, it starts conducting electricity. So the electricity increases with the increase in concentration of the common salt, and the Faraday classified the substance into two categories based on the ability to conduct electricity. First, if the aqueous solution conducts the electricity, they are called the electrolytes. Which the aqueous solution which do not conduct electricity, they are called the non-electrolyte. So this part is clear to you? One is electrolyte, other
Yeah.
is non-electrolyte. Okay. Now, once you classify the one is electrolyte, other is a non-electrolyte, then in the electrolyte you can classify into the strong and the weak. What is a strong electrolyte? What is a weak electrolyte? Strong electrolyte means it completely dissociates. Then a lot of ions will be present. Weak electrolyte means less of the ions will be present. Example, when you dissolve the HCl in the water, so all the H plus ions will get dispersed in the solution. But when you dissolve the acetic acid, CH3COH, very less of the H plus ions will be coming in the solution. So that becomes
Okay.
a weak electrolyte, other becomes a strong electrolyte, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. So here we are taking the example of sodium chloride putting in the water. So basically it gets straight into the Na plus ions and the Cl minus ions. And when you increase the concentration of the NaCl, so increase of the Na plus and Cl minus ion happens, and then conductivity increases. But the same way when you put the acetic acid there, so partial dissociation of the H plus ions will be there, and that will be taken as a weak electrolyte. Got it?
Yes, I got it.
Okay. Now, it should be noted that the weak electrolyte equilibrium is established between the ions and the unionized molecules, and this type of equilibrium involving the ions in the aqueous solution is called the ionic equilibrium. So we talk about ionic equilibrium. So why does the partial dissociation happens only in the case of weak electrolytes? Because they reach the equilibrium stage much earlier, right?
Yeah.
So that's why further what will happen, they reach the equilibrium, so even if you put extra, then reverse reaction will start happening, and the concentration, partial concentration remains the same only. Clear?
Yes, sir, clear.
Now we'll go to the acid base and the salt part. Acid base salt part is the first part is pretty much similar to that part. Yeah, this is just the introduction part of the H plus and this part, acid base salts. Can you just go through this acid base salts, this part, tell the Arrhenius concept, because 7.10 Arrhenius concept I'll start explaining. With acid base salt is pretty much similar whatever you studied earlier itself, So in case any line which is not clear, I'll explain to you that part, but just finish that part, reading part, okay, so that we don't miss even a single line from there.
Okay, sir.
Okay, then I'll tell you about the Arrhenius concept of acids and bases. Okay. Yeah, then Nisha, are you getting the 11th problem?
So can you explain the last part when they say that G and C and B have 3 boys between them?
Okay. Yeah. 7 boys. Let's understand this part, Nisha, clearly. So we are given that ABCD, right? So we are given the ABCD, EFG are standing in the straight line facing towards the north, and F is the immediate left of the D. So F is the immediate left of the D, and G is between the A and E. So let's draw this part, and then we'll try to understand this part. Okay, so I'll just put the line on this part, which is putting the north direction, and then we'll try to understand. Okay, so all the parameters I'll just write it down here. Yeah. So what he's saying is, so first conditions, this part is F is in the immediate left of D.
So that is FD.
So first immediate left, so first condition you got is FD, right?
Yes, sir.
FD is first condition. Okay. Next part is that
So G is between AE.
G is between A and E. So A, G,
So AEB or EGB, EGA.
yeah, A, G, E or E, G, A. Correct, no? These are the
Yes.
two conditions you got. Okay,
Yes.
perfect. Next one, Tanisha. F
So
and
F
A
and
have only one boy between them.
So
F
F
and
dash
A.
A.
Yes, Tanisha, right. F dash.
So it can be also A dash F, right?
Yeah, both conditions are possible. A dash F. Correct. So basically this becomes the third equations, right? And what else now?
So E and C
E and
have
C
two
have
boys.
two boys between them. Okay, E and C.
So E dash dash C or C dash dash E.
Very good, Tanisha. C dash dash E. Yes, that becomes the fourth condition for you. Excellent.
So
Now-
and then C and D have three boys between them. So
C and B
dash
have three boys between them. So remember that they have the boys in the okay. C and B have three boys between them. Okay. So now C, three boys. 1, 2, 3. C and B, no? C and B. Yeah. So this can be B. So it can be anything, right? BC, or it can be CB or BC, right? So
Yes, sir.
all conditions are given to you now. So they are arranged in the standing a straight line. Fine. Now let's try to merge the things together. Okay. What is the
Yes.
setting arrangement? Now let's try to arrange the first conditions. First is FD.
Yes, sir.
First is FD is very close to it. Now you have, when you combine the first and third equation, now FD is together. So either it can be FDA or it can be
ADF.
ADF, so not possible, because it has to be, because D is immediately right of F, right? So FDA is possible
So why ADF is not possible?
because they have given F is immediate left of D,
Yes, sir.
right? F is immediate
Yes.
left of D.
So then it will be FDA.
Yeah, it can be FDA or it can be AFD also. Yeah, both conditions can be possible, right?
Yes, sir.
It can be both. Well, let's check the both conditions. So first one is, it can be FDA also is possible, and second is AFD is also possible. Correct, Tanisha?
Yes, sir.
Next, now we have the AGE. AGE or
EGA.
EGA, both are possible. So when you have the FDA, then AGE can be possible. When you have A gap FD, then EGA can be possible, right? No? Yeah. Yes.
Yes.
Then we can combine all the possibilities. We can combine both one now. So FDA GE possible. Next condition, when the A is that, then EGA. So EGA gap FD is also possible. Correct, Tanisha?
Yes, sir.
Next, you have E and C. E gap C and CEs, both are possible. So EC, E, because E, yeah. Between E and C, you have two people, right?
So between E and C, two people.
Yes. So E and C, you have two people. And let's combine this last two. E and C, yeah, between E and C, two people, and between B and C, you have three people.
Yes, sir.
So let's enter E is already given. So if we have E and C, two people are there. So yeah. So now I think we should be able to get it now. Between E and C. So E and C, two people, we can get it. So C can be between the EGAC FD and between B and C. Three more people are there. So FD and dash. Yeah, correct. I think we got it now. Look, we'll combine the CB and BC things together. So they have already given the EC. You have four people in that part. Sorry, two people are there. So this combination will be EGAC, then FD, and between B and C you have four more people. Between B and C you have the three people, right? Yeah.
Yes, sir.
So we already got the B and so yeah. So what is left now? A, B, C, D, E, F. D is left out. No, D is there, E is there, F is there, G is there. Which is the other element? A, B, C, D, E, F, G. D, E, F, G. G is okay. A, B, C, D, E, F, G. So between which is left now? C and B have the three boys left. C and B.
Sir, if we see, then the condition says that there will be two boys between E and C and EGA. So there is a possibility that EGA can be in a line together.
Yeah, we put that part, no?
So then we can write it directly as EGAC.
Yeah, EGAC you can write it. But FD, one more thing will be there. Between B and C you have three people.
So now that means that between B and C there are three people. So EGA there are three. So B will be at the one end of the row.
Correct.
So
Yeah.
then it will be BEGAC.
Oh yeah. Okay. B can be this part also, no?
Yes.
Yeah, correct. Between B and C, yeah, B can be this side also. Yeah, correct. You are right. Because yes, you are right. So it can be BEGACFD. Yeah, correct. You are right. You are right. Yeah, I'll just send you this part. Whatever I have done it here.
Okay, sir.
So all the condition can be kept. Now just check whether all the condition getting satisfied or not.
Yes, sir.
Is it satisfying?
So I'll check once.
Yeah, just check.
Yes, sir.
Satisfied, right?
Yes, sir.
Good. Now answer these questions now.
So I'll move on to the 16th one now.
Yeah. Yeah, Vijay, any questions, any doubt till now?
Not yet, sir.
Excellent. This is a this is a simple revision of your 10th one only, right?
10th grade.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you done with the acid base salt? Then we can go to the
Yes, sir. That's all.
Arrhenius concept of acid and the bases now. Okay. So Arrhenius, again, he was one of the chemists who taught about the hydronium ions, who actually explained about the hydronium ions that time. So acids are the substance that dissociate. He basically these all this concepts was based on the how to identify the acid and the bases. So acid was the substance that dissociate in the water to give the hydrogen ions, and bases are substance that produce the hydroxyl ions. So ionization of the acid can be represented in the following equations. Now here write down the equation. HX gives you HX plus H plus and X minus ions.
Okay.
Then we'll try to I'll explain to you this part.
Okay, sir.
See here he talks about these two things. Okay, let's understand these two things clearly. So when he talks about the HX and the H plus and X minus ions, so he is telling that whenever any acid is dissolved in the water, so it gives you the H plus ions and the HX minus ions, correct? H plus ions basically in the case of example HCl, so it becomes the H plus is hydrogen ions and the Cl minus ions. So HX combines with the H2O forms the hydronium ions plus the X minus ions. So basically general reaction of the acid with the water. Now he talks about that hydrogen ions and bases see these are for the acid, right? Acid produces the H plus ion. Finally H plus ions combined with water to form the hydronium ion, or that is the H3O plus ions. Clear? Now
Clear, sir.
he also talks about that produces the hydroxyl ions, So acids and bases which produce bases when it dissolve in water produce the hydroxyl ion. What is hydroxyl ions? OH minus ions, basically NaOH, right? When dissolves in water, it gives you the Na plus and the OH minus ions. OH minus is nothing but the hydroxyl ions. Now, so bare proton, that H plus is very reactive and cannot exist freely in the aqueous solution, and thus it forms the bond with the oxygen atom of the solvent water molecule to give the trigonal pyramidal hydronium ions H. So H plus ions is the what we say is the base proton. Okay, when you say the base proton of the H plus ions, so H plus ions is a highly reactive, so it combines with the neutral water molecule and forms the H3O plus ions. So that's basically hydronium ions, right? So when you say H3O plus ions, so basically it becomes, since oxygen is electronegative, it forms the coordinate bond with the hydrogen. Okay, and then it forms a H3O plus ion. So oxygen takes the plus sign because oxygen gives the one lone pair of electron to the protonated base. So in this chapter we'll discuss about H plus and the H3O ions interchangeably to mean the same as the hydrated proton. So basically you can represent with the H plus or the H3O plus ions whenever we talk about acid is dissolved in the water. Okay? So now write on the reaction now. MOH plus, when the base now, what is the hydroxyl group it gives?
Oh, sir, I'm done.
You got it? Check the answer, Tanisha.
So it's correct.
Excellent. Superb. Now go to the 21st.
So I'm done with the whole exercise.
Oh, both you are done? Wow, that's nice. Everything is done now in this exercise?
Yes.
Till 21, 21 also done? Sorry.
I'm done. Yes.
Till the excellent, superb. So we are done with all these questions. Now I think you can just attempt the MCQ.
Yes.
MCQ, let's do one thing, Tanisha. You can just do, set a time for it and then do that. Is it okay? Because
Okay.
let's do one thing, Tanisha. So attempt the 10 questions. First 10 questions, take 10 minutes to solve it.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay.
Set a timer for 10 minutes and do attempt only 10 questions. I want to see how much you're attempting in this time. Okay?
Okay.
And then we'll validate. So when you are ready, you let me know. I'll start the timer for you. Then we can do that.
Okay.
Done?
Sir, now?
Yeah, you can start now. Time is 1:15 now. So by 1:25, I think you should be done then.
Okay, sir.
Okay?
Okay,
Try.
sir.
Okay, Vijay. So where are we now? Yeah, written down this part, Vijay. MOH gives you
Yes,
M
sir.
plus and OH minus. So basically, when you dissolve the base, so what Aaron has told, that it will give you the hydroxyl ion. Hydroxyl ion is nothing but OH minus ions, right? Now, now what happens to the OH ions now, right? Now, OH ions, we see the Arrhenius concept acid base, it suffers from the limitation of being applicable only to the aqueous solutions and also does not account for the basic substance like ammonia, which do not possess the hydroxyl group. See, he talked about that concept acid and base, but there was a limitation in the case of the bases with the when the bases were dissolved in the water. So all the bases was not giving you the hydroxyl ions. So only the alkalis and the strong bases were giving the hydroxyl ions, but the non-metals were not giving the hydroxyl ions. Because example, ammonia is also basic, but when it dissolves in the water, it doesn't give the OH minus ions.
Yeah.
Correct? So how do we cater then? So that's what becomes the limitation of the Arrhenius concept of acid and base. So for the acid part was very clear, but base part was not clear. Now let's understand the hydroxyl ions now. Okay. Now let's do this part now. Yeah. Draw this part. Hydronium ion and the hydroxyl ions now. Draw the structure of this part. H3O ions, and then I'll explain to you.
Okay, sir.
This part. 2, 4, 6. Now, you drawn the figure now? Hydronium ions and hydroxide ions. Now look at this. The hydrogen ions by itself is a bare proton with very small size and intense. So when H plus ions is dissolved when the strong acid gives H plus ion protonated ions, when it dissolves in water, so it combines with the water molecules, as we know that it forms a coordinate covalent bond and it gives you the H3O plus ions. So now all these hydronium ions, H3O plus ions, correct? Now further, H3O plus ions, right? Now again it gets combined with the H2O molecule, because this has been detected in many compounds, the H3O plus and the Cl minus. So basically, in this, when we talk about H3O plus Cl minus, so it can be compound also here, because one is positive ions, other is negative ions. So there is possibility that it can form the solid state, that is a hydrated chloride one. And in the aqueous solution, the hydronium ion is further hydrated to give the special like. Now what is that? Hydronium ions again is getting dissolved in the water now. How it is getting dissolved in the water? Let's see. Now, what we see here is, in this part, if I just tell you this part, there is something called the hydrogen bonding starts happening between the oxygen of water molecule and the hydrogen of the hydronium ions. Okay, so I'll just send you this part. So that's the place and the number of hydronium ion, it increases, number of hydrogen bonds keeps increasing. Okay, so this is the place where the hydrogen bond starts happening between the water molecule and the H of the hydronium ions. So H3O plus is there, so between H and OH, so this starts the hydrogen bonding, that part. So the combinations of the hydronium ions starts existing, so it becomes a H3O4 plus. Got it? Similarly, you can get when you have the only two, then it will become the H3O2 minus, or it will become H5O3 minus, and similarly H7O4 minus. Did you understand this part? One by one it starts combining with the individual water molecule and it forms the different compounds altogether. So now you got the H9O4 minus O4 plus ions, correct? No? You getting, Vijay? Is it audible to you?
Yes, it was audible. I was talking on you.
Okay, but did you understand whatever I told you, that how is that, H5O2 minus,
That's the answer.
okay, H5O2 plus and the H7O3 plus, and similarly number of molecules keeps on increasing, right? So not only here, so other places also it can get combined. So this was for the hydronium ions. Similarly, we can have the OH minus ion combining with the H2O molecules. Got it? And then you will get the different
Yes, I got it.
compounds altogether. Fine. Okay, now let's go to the next part of the Bronsted-Lowry acid and bases now. So again, so we got the limitation of the Arrhenius concept, correct? Now, what was the Bronsted-Lowry acid and base definition? He told that acid is substance that is capable of donating the hydrogen H plus ions, and bases are substances capable of accepting the H plus ions. Very simple definition he told Bronsted-Lowry, because he told the acid which can donate the H plus ions, bases which can accept the H plus ions. Clear? Simple definitions. He says the acid is the thing which, or in the simple terms, one is the proton donor, other is the proton acceptor. Write on this part. As per the Bronsted-Lowry acid definition of acid and base, so one is the proton donor, other is the proton acceptor. Correct? Now, write on the equation now. Ammonia plus H2O gives you NH4 plus and OH minus.
What is the root?
Okay, now when you dissolve the ammonia in the water, what will happen now in this case? So you see that ammonium NH4 plus ions gets created, and the water gives you the OH minus ion. Now ammonia is the base, right? When you divide the base in the water, so water will be treated as the is more acidic than the ammonia, so it becomes a weak base now. So ammonia donates ammonia adds a proton, because water gives you H plus ions. So H plus ions combines with ammonia gives the NH4 plus ions, and water gives you the OH minus ion. So now here, when as per the Bronsted-Lowry concept, that base are the proton acceptors. So here NH3 takes one H plus ions and becomes the NH4 ions. So it became what? This NH4 ions is called the conjugate acid, because this was the base which has accepted the H plus ion and then simply becomes the H plus ions. It is that will be called as a conjugate acid. And similarly, the water which was giving the OH minus ion, now this OH minus ion will be called as a conjugate base. Is it clear? This concept is clear to you?
Yeah. Clear.
Okay, just write down the conjugate acid and conjugate base properties, and let's do with a similar thing with the HCl also. Then now we are learning the new concept of conjugate acid and conjugate base. This is very important. Tanisha, time up now. Are you done? 10 minutes over for you.
Yeah, I've done till 8th one and I have not understood the 7th one.
Okay, no problem. Till how many you done? 8 till 7, 8th one you did, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay,
so basically, questions.
Yeah, no problem, no problem. We are just measuring the time, Now I want you to, till 8th question, just evaluate the answer from the backside. Just check how many got correct, how many incorrect.
Okay, sir.
Then we'll measure it. Basically, the whole idea is to measure, where we stand right now.
Okay, sir.
You wrote the reaction, Vijay? HCl plus H2O gives you H3O plus ions and Cl minus ions.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now I want you to know this part is that HCl, as per the reaction, HCl was giving H plus ions, and this H3O plus ions will be called as the conjugate. So what? Now whatever the hydronium ions which was becoming earlier, that will be called as a conjugate acid, and the Cl minus will be called as a conjugate base. So in this case, who is the proton acceptor and who is the proton donor?
Hmm. The H3O plus is a proton donor, right? Sorry, the proton acceptor.
Correct.
The H2O is the proton donor.
No, always the acid will be proton donor. HCl is a proton
Okay.
donor and water will be proton acceptor. Got it? See,
Okay.
in the first example, when you took the base with the water, so what will happen? The base is the proton acceptor and the water becomes a proton donor.
Yeah.
So whoever accepts the proton, that becomes a conjugate acid. Okay, and whoever donates it becomes a conjugate base. Now, in the acid path, HCl, it donated the proton, so it became the conjugate base now. Cl minus became conjugate base. And the water molecule accepted the proton, it becomes a conjugate acid. Remember that why we say conjugate acid base is because conjugate base is basically the weak acid, weak base we talk about. Okay, and when we say conjugate acid, it's a weak acid. Okay, it's not acid.
Okay.
Clear? So that's a weak things. Okay,
Yes, sir. Clear now.
clear? Okay, now just
Yeah.
read out this part, conjugate acid, conjugate, then we'll just read out the conjugate is Bronsted-Lowry acid and bases now, and in case any confusion, let me know. Yeah,
Okay,
Tanisha,
sir.
how many correct, how many incorrect?
So till 8th one, it's all are correct except the 7th one.
Okay, only one question went wrong?
Yes, sir.
Okay, fine. So whatever you attempted, everything was fine. Only for the one question which went wrong. No problem. Just yeah. So we need to work on. Basically, we need to work on the timing part now for you, right? So
Yes,
as now, yeah, efficiency is fine for you. Just we'll try to do some more, time-oriented work now for you, right? Sure. I think let's close it now. You can just attempt the remaining part also. MCQs also. I want you to finish MCQ 1 to 30 is there. Just attempt it. In case any question which is not clear, you can just send me a message. Fine. Then
Okay.
we can do it together.
Okay.
Okay. Fine.
Okay.
Vijay, I think let's close it, Vijay. You can just read as part of homework, and then we'll go over the exercise problems. Okay.
Okay, sir.
Okay, Vijay. Sure. Bye.
That's all.
Bye.